And welcome to the Scarlet and Great podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, the Scarlet Great Empire, please check out our other videos. Please subscribe if you can. Please like the video. That helps us all, as always. If you're listening to us via any one of your favorite streaming services, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, whichever one you like to listen to on a podcast, please, again, send us a like. Please, share with your friends who might like to hear some free Buckeye content. I'm here again with Dylan Freeman at Dylan Freeman VP for his Twitter handle if you want to check him out. He was on the last video when we talked about the signing of Keon Gray's. Well-received video, well-received commentary from people who wanted to learn a little bit more about the most recent Buckeye commit. No Buckeye commits right now, but we are going to talk about what everybody else seems to be talking about, which is now we're going into position battles as spring football is about 2 weeks away. And we're going to start, right? We're going to do some position talk. We're going to talk different positions, but we're going to do only one position tonight. We're going to start with what else? The quarterback position, which is becoming a fame position at Ohio State. It used to be, okay, who's the quarterback? Are they really going to make a huge difference? Maybe I'm old enough to remember when it didn't, but it's since Urban Meyer, even Tressel, I got to say even Tressel, they've made that position more popular, more dynamic, more, they put them more in the spotlight, in the national spotlight than it used to be. Now, Ohio State quarterbacks are seen as Heisman contenders year in and year out. Rather, in yesteryear, they still were seen like we'd have one once in a while. It was pretty good, Anyway, we're missing Justin Fields. He's leaving. He's off to greener pastures in the NFL. And when I say greener, I mean money. And he's going to be making some good money here in the first round. He's taken a bit of a hit, unfortunately, with his lack of film last year. It didn't end on a great note, and now people are looking for reasons to knock him, and it's getting a little frustrating. But he's going to prove everybody wrong at the NFL level. Very talented, very smart, very hardworking kid. We all have faith in him. He's going to be good. But we do have to replace him at Ohio State. And that's part of the fun of college football is the next guy up. Because the way we're recruiting it now, the quarterback position is now fun. Because back in the day, I'd be like, oh, gosh, we're losing our one good one. What are we going to do next? Now it's, man, there's like 4 of them to pick from. And I'm excited for this quarterback battle, Dylan. How do you feel about it?
It's going to shape up to be something pretty entertaining. All the guys have great strength that are coming in and weaknesses. And Ryan Day is going to tailor this offense to put them in the best position to succeed. And I have every faith in Ryan Day to make sure that we are going to be able to have a successful quarterback. And this is probably arguably one of the greatest battles in recent time because ever since Haskins Burrow, but that didn't really end up playing out that way because Burrow kind of got hurt, and it kind of thrusted Haskins into the spotlight. And so it ended up really not necessarily being the battle that turned out to be. But this is going to be an entertaining one going on throughout spring.
Absolutely. Obviously, the contenders are C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. Both came out in the same class in 2020. Both going to be redshirt freshmen, or maybe not even redshirt if that year didn't count. They didn't. Neither one of them threw a pass last year, but they both played a little bit, very little, and ran the ball. And they were both fairly successful running the ball. Maybe C.J. Stroud a little bit more because of that touchdown against Michigan State was pretty impressive. But Jack Miller took his team down for a touchdown as well on his drive. Didn't get much of an ample opportunity with a bad snap in the Michigan State game, but it is what it is. It's not a knock on Jack Miller. And of course, incoming freshman Kyle McCord from St. Joseph's in Pennsylvania. Tell you what, look, you're going to read reports, and Dylan, you can agree or disagree with me. You're the expert here. This is just my opinion. You're going to see reports. Kyle McCord is challenging. You don't count him out of that starting spot. I really, highly, really doubt he has a very good shot at being the starter because you have 2 guys that have a year in the system, and that year of getting used to being a college football player is just so huge, right? I'm not saying Kyle McCord can't handle it. I don't know him. Maybe he's just very tough mentally, very tough, and he can very smart, and he can just acclimate quickly. But you got to believe guys like Stroud and Miller would have the upper hand. This is what we do every year, that we don't count this guy out, and then they don't play much. It's like, okay, well, maybe we do count him out because maybe it was a little overhyped. But I would say the main battle is got to be Miller and Stroud. But I will say McCord has a good shot at being the backup because I think he's that good. Let's start with C.J. Stroud because everybody seems to believe he's the presumed favorite to win the job. Dylan and I kind of agree on that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dylan. You kind of agree with that? He's a presumed favorite for right now?
Yeah, I think kind of like you mentioned earlier with the year in the system. I will say, however, that really wasn't your typical first
That's
year
true.
getting in the
Fair
system.
point.
So, I mean, normally I would say that you have a huge advantage going in, having that year in the system. I mean, you still got that weight training and stuff like that, but it was so sporadic with how you can work out and just kind of tension with the coaches and number of visit, like time you can spend with them. So it was a little different, but I do think that Stroud does have the upper hand. He does it all. You know, he's a pretty good runner. He gets overlooked from this running aspect. You saw that in the Michigan State game. He's not a bad athlete. You know, he prefers to be in the pocket, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if there's
Probably what we prefer at Ohio State now, right? We want a guy who can run a little bit. You want a guy like that, even in the NFL, a guy who can move, but you want him to lead pass first.
you have to have that, especially with Day's offense. You need those guys that are going to be able to get the ball out the quick to the receivers, make all the throws, and as well as 3rd and 5, no one's open. You're gonna have to take it and tuck and run sometimes, and then occasional. I mean, we saw it with Haskins at the very end of with Urban. He needed to get those 4 or 5 yards on the read option, even if it wasn't looking like a big home run hit. You know, he just needs it just to keep the defense honest and to be able to have the running back kind of have true vision and kind of be able to run it whenever he wants and not have that defensive end just crash down, which is kind of the upper hand that Stroud does have. He does have the ability to keep it and get the edge.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I actually love the way the game has evolved to where, like, I always use Aaron Rodgers because to me he was like one of the physically most prototypical quarterbacks to ever play the game in the sense that great arm, great cerebral ability, but also he could kill you with his legs a little bit too. And I don't need Michael Vick. I need a guy who is good enough to get that first down. I mean, let's be honest. JT, that was his bread and butter, right? Is getting out and outside the pocket and making plays with his feet. And he wasn't a burner. He wasn't 4.4. I mean, he was a 4.6, 4.6.5, 4.7 guy at times, depending on how healthy his knee was. But he could get that 3rd and 16 out of nowhere because he just knew what he was doing with it on the ground. CJ Stroud strikes me as that kind of guy. Like, you're not going to run the read option with him necessarily too much. You will a couple of times here and there to keep the defenses honest, but you won't do it too much. But he will, if a play breaks down and the read's not there, if he sees an opening, he can go get it, and with his feet. That's going to be key, obviously. What about his strengths as a passer, Dylan? Do you think you say he can make all the throws, right? I mean, he's got the arm enough to make the Ryan Day offense go.
Yeah, he has a pretty good arm. There's no really weaknesses. That the great thing about his arm strength is not really arm strength, is his delivery, his throwing motion. If you watch it, it's straight over the top. I mean, if you draw it up, like if you watch Peyton Manning, that arm is right over the top every single time, and that's what the great thing about him. He throws a really catchable ball, which not a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of really good ones that don't throw a catchable ball, but they're so good that it makes up for it. But with Stroud, all the balls are right there, and it's kind of an easy catch for wide receivers, and has good spin on it, so that they kind of get used to it, and it's not like sporadic, and that's kind of a big deal when you just kind of get used to it, especially with new wide receivers that you haven't really worked with a lot, just because they haven't been around, other than Olave and Wilson. He didn't really get much time with other ones last year working with them, just because they're either freshmen or just the crazy year that we had. So knowing that you're going to get the ball delivered to you and kind of being able to have a familiar ball come in, it's a pretty big deal.
That's a good point. Would you say his weaknesses right now are simply just he needs to bulk up a little bit more and he's just experience more than anything?
Yeah, he's a smart kid, and everyone, if you watch him, he picked up at Elite 11 when he went out there and won it. He's a really sharp kid. However, it's a brand new offense coming from high school. Ryan Day asks a lot out of his quarterbacks, and he demands it, and he's going to make him uncomfortable. Kind of like what they did with Fields early on. They made him uncomfortable. They threw a lot out of him, and they made him sink or swim, and Fields swam, and they're going to do that with Stroud early on, make him see what he can do, and so that when the games get later on in the year, Big Ten time, that he feels comfortable making pretty much all those throws.
All right, let's move on to Jack Miller, a guy who, unfortunately, by the Ohio State fan base, gets overlooked quite a bit. I mean, RJ Young brought him up recently, and kudos to RJ Young. First of all, he's killing it with his content lately, and I hope to one day be an RJ Young type. That'd be nice, because dude's obviously got a lot of respect for Ohio State. You got to respect that. But He brought up Jack Miller. I'm glad he did because a lot of Ohio State fan base, Jack Miller's got no shot. Do you think he has a shot to be the starter this year? Because if you ask, I'll tell you one thing. You ask his family is very much not very talkative, but they absolutely believe in Jack. I mean, you talk to his dad, they absolutely believe in competition. And for what it's worth, for those who are wondering, CJ and Jack apparently are really good friends. There's competition, of course, but they are not hating on each other. The brotherhood is deep there. I mean, I look at it and say, look, what Jack's got a lot of talent. When he came out of high school, he was just sophomore year high school. It looked like this guy's the best quarterback in the nation. It's not even close. And due to injuries, due to some unfortunate circumstances surrounding the team, I will say I think there were things beyond his control that dropped his rating. He couldn't compete in the Elite 11 because of a lat injury. And he sometimes didn't look great in high school because his offensive line was terrible, just awful. I think the offensive line coach, don't quote me on this, got fired after the first game of his senior year. It was so bad. But he had that it factor. He could sometimes bring them and will them to win. I look at Jack Miller and I think whatever. I don't know if he has any physical traits that are better than any other quarterback on the team, but he does have, in my opinion, that it factor. He can will you to a win. Do you see that with him, or am I just reaching here?
Yeah, you see that. You see that determination that you don't. I mean, it's you either
Can't
have
teach that.
Yeah, you either have it or you don't. And he might not be the most physically talented, arm strength wise, or anything like that. But was at the time was Burrow any of those things either?
No, Burrow never showed like an arm strength that like put the fear of God in anybody.
Yeah, and Miller's gotten a lot more explosive since he's been in McMurray. He's put on some good weight. You know what I mean? Like kind of we were talking about Grays. Just getting more explosive is a big deal. Not necessarily faster even, but just more explosive. And that helps a lot in the pocket, especially since Miller knows all about having to scramble in the pocket. And
yeah, unfortunately.
I think kind of getting situated, I think that I don't personally think that he's in the line to kind of get in a real shot at starting. I think he'll battle for backup is kind of where I see him.
Do you think he transfers after spring if he doesn't get the job? Or they pretty much? I mean, I don't know if they're going to ever tell any of these quarterbacks, "Hey, you're the guy." You go after spring. I think they're going to want him to compete in the fall. But if he gives like a Burrow treatment and says like, "Look, right now the other guy's leading, and we want y'all to compete, but he's a step ahead of you at the moment." Do you think Miller would transfer?
I hate speculating on things like.
You know what? You're right. I apologize. That's not even
No,
a fair question.
I do think that we are not going to name a starting quarterback until game week. That we will
That's
not
probably
do it,
true.
and for many reasons.
You know what? I want to apologize to everybody listening. I don't want to speculate on anybody transferring. That's really cold, and I don't like it. And I respect the Miller family, and I respect Jack, and I want to see him compete. I want to see him get a fair shot at the starting spot because I do think he's talented enough to be a starter at Ohio State. Even though I think the fan base is writing him off, I just don't. I used to do that, like who's going to transfer. We'd have whole segments on it. I just listening to Berm and other people talk about it is meaning that he doesn't like talking about that speculation because it's disrespectful. I actually agree. It is disrespectful. I don't want to put you on the spot there. Don't you have to answer that?
I think Stroud, they're same year coming in, same class. I just think that at this point, Stroud's ceiling is much higher. And if you're going to have a young quarterback start, and if they're pretty much even or even a little ahead, go with the guy that's going to give you the best shot to win. I mean, obviously now, but that they're close, but the guy that's going to lead you for the next two years or so,
At least two.
Yeah, there's no reason not to do that from Ohio State standpoint. Get him ready already, and especially if it's close,
I'll put it this way. I will say this. If it's Stroud who ends up being the starter, or even Miller for that matter, a lot of people out there think Quinn Ewers is going to come in first year and start. I'm like, that's going to be the second year starting for either Miller or Stroud, or even McCord. If somehow he did something I don't think is going to happen and became a starter, I think people need to temper that expectation just a little bit. Okay, we'll move on. Jack Miller, you say his what do you think is, just real quickly, pinpoint his strengths and weaknesses?
Just he's a coach on the field. I mean, that's a bad analogy that everyone hates, especially after hearing.
So he's tough Borland as a quarterback.
But he's a smart kid. He's gritty. He's going to stick his neck out there every single play, and he's going to give it all. And sometimes that's better than talent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but the same thing, Stroud will do that too. So it's kind of tough. But I think that I don't think there's any really weaknesses in Miller's game. He's a pretty efficient passer. He can make all the throws. you'd think that how many times he got sacked in high school is a detriment to how his athletic ability, but it's not. I mean, he's a fairly good athlete. Just he had no
Kind of
shot.
a surprising athlete,
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean, I think pound for pound, he's probably, if not equal to Stroud, just athletic ability.
Yeah, and it was good how much good weight he put on right away. He was 225 right away, so he's got the body and physically to be there. And so basically, what we're projecting is Stroud will probably be the starter, Miller and McCord playing the backup. Let's go to McCord now, who's going to be battling for that backup spot. He ain't there to play third, for anybody. McCord, if you're reading reports, seems to be making a solid impression on the coaching staff already. Taking leadership role with the freshman class. Obviously, showing off a great arm as a freshman. And I remember when I saw McCord commit, I saw his highlights. I said, this dude's gonna make waves right away. Starting to show why the McCarthy family needs to chill a little bit on why we took McCord when we said we weren't taking a QBs, because McCord's just too good to pass up for us. McCord reminds me of another Dwayne Haskins. Not quite that athletic, not a great runner, but man, he can make every single throw, make it quick, and he can make it from about every angle with his footwork. What do you think? What would it take? See, I don't believe he's going to start. I just don't. What do you think it would take for me to be proven wrong and McCord ended up beating out both of them?
I think there's a decent shot. I'm not saying
Really?
I think that Stroud will start, and that's what I'm predicting. I'll still stick with that. But I really do believe that.
Hey, pup.
Oh yeah.
It's all good, man. We love dogs, man.
But I really do believe that he has a shot to kind of make a wave and challenge for that spot. I do see him being the backup. He just has everything you want, and that arm talent is just like you mentioned with Haskins. If you watch the Haskins highlight, which is rare for high school, not every pass was a 50-yard deep ball or a check down to wide receiver, or a little swing pass. He was throwing 15-yard slants, post routes. You know what I mean? 25-yard out routes, which is very impressive for high school because most offenses don't do that. But they trusted McCord so much to run it all, and just with Haskins, he threw that slant over the middle all the time and little seam route, which isn't as easy as it looks, especially in high school with wide receivers and going against DBs, especially the ones that McCord was going against, like IMG and kind of like that. So I think he'll battle for that starting spot, but I think that Stroud has the edge and will.
Do you think McCord ends up being the backup?
Yes.
Okay, so you're projecting a Stroud start, McCord backup, Miller to be in third string.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's a projection. It's not a guarantee, folks. It's just what people are feeling, what Dylan's feeling, and hey, I respect your opinions on that. I'm hoping, again, I hope Miller gets a fair shot. I hope the perception isn't already there that he doesn't have the chance of starting. I hope Miller gets that shot to start. But that being said, okay, Dylan, quickly give me your top 5 all-time Buckeye QB. No, you know what? Not all-time. That's unfair. The 2000s QBs for Ohio State.
In order or just in general?
In general, you don't have to come up with an order right now. It's on the spot.
Troy Smith has got to be up there by far. I mean, just what he did and when the Heisman, that's some probably wasn't, 5-10 years ago, you never thought that was going to happen again. But now with Day, you might have a chance at a couple. But I think him, Haskins has to be up there. Just the talent and arm ability that he had is probably unprecedented at Ohio State. And I'm not sure we ever see that again. I think McCord has a chance to be in that kind of plane, but I think Haskins is definitely in there. Braxton, kind of like you and me mentioned, just his game changer. And he wasn't as bad of a quarterback as people think. I mean, he
actually had a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, he did. I mean, if you watch that against early on in his career, like against Cal and those teams like that, he was throwing 40-yard balls all day long against, not great teams, but good enough teams that you shouldn't be able to do that on all the time. Fields for sure. And how many is that?
Down to 2 guys, JT and Terrell.
Yeah, JT.
Oh boy, you get everybody mad at you.
No, look what he did. I mean, those records are pretty impressive, and he had so many different offense coordinators and a couple inept quarterback coaches in the time.
Yeah. Jet. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that really, as well as the injuries. I mean, we didn't really the last 2 years we didn't get to see the real JT that
Hmm.
we saw early on. You saw a little bit of it with when he was like with Day, but he was a shell of what he really was.
Yeah, it was unfair what happened to him coaching wise in his career. So do you if you see Stroud as a starter, do you think Stroud has that ability to get in that list? All of a sudden, in a few years, we're saying, oh yeah, CJ Stroud on the top 5 ever in Buckeye history.
I think that he's on the verge. He has all the tools. I just think that those guys were special, and it's however with today's offenses, they're become more prolific, throwing the ball more, just kind of getting more like you mentioned earlier on the show, being more quarterback centric. It's easier to kind of get on that list if you notice a lot of the quarterbacks have come from recent. You know what I mean? Not just early on, from more from recent. I think that it's a big deal. I think that he's had a chance to be in that 4 to 10 range. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
throughout the 2000s, I think that that's kind of where his ceiling is.
Yeah, there was a time in Ohio State history I mentioned people's like the best you could hope for was like Craig Krenzel, and I'm sorry, y'all who hate on JT, you didn't watch Craig Krenzel play. Holy, Zwick was unfortunate because he was expected to be a top flight guy. Thankfully, Troy Smith bailed out that era, but the yeah Beckman, jeez. But Krenzel to me, even though they won a title, to me was like the epitome of this is painful to watch. This is painful QB play to watch. And he would make a play he had the Matt Sylvester syndrome about him. He would play terrible all game, then he'd make one play that like, oh see, I told you. And I was, oh geez, drove me. But people who always hated on JT is like, dude, I've been through some terrible QB play.
I have one revision to the top 5.
What's that?
Bowserman.
Oh, obviously. That dude could throw it out of the stadium, literally, and he did often for no reason because he was drunk or just didn't know the playbook. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, Dylan Freeman, at Dylan Freeman VP. Appreciate you coming on, Dylan. We definitely so the projection is the CJ to be the starter. I think pretty much everybody agrees with that. And we also think he has the talent to be in that top 5 conversation by the time he's done. So especially with Ryan Day's offense, I think it's going to get to a point where Ryan Day's offenses are so, expected to like every QB that comes in. Oh, he's a top 5. Oh, he's a top 5. So we were talking about with Kyle Lamb, and you kind of agreed with me. It's crazy. JT is legitimately, statistically, you call him the top 5 QB of all time in Ohio State history. In about 10 years, nobody's going to remember he even played because of how many great QBs are going to have right in a row. It started with Dwayne Haskins, and I mean, it's like I thought JT was an excellent QB, excellent college QB, I should say. I didn't think he was going to be a pro QB, but I thought for a college, he had a lot of great moments as a college QB. Haskins comes in, and you're like, I didn't know this could happen at Ohio State. This is ridiculous. So, and then Justin Fields, of course, had some of the greatest stretches in Ohio State history as a quarterback. So, I'm excited to see what CJ does. So, Dylan, as always, man, thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Of course, thanks for having me, Corey.
Anyway, guys, thank you for listening. As always, goodbye, God bless, and go Bucks.